My stepmother stood in the ER doorway, arms crossed, and laughed right in my face. "Stop being so fucking dramatic, Saris. It's just a headache. You're always looking for attention like this." Behind her, 6 relatives, including my own father, nodded and murmured in agreement. "She's embarrassing the whole family," one said. "Always making up stories," another added. They told the nurse I was lying. They told the doctor I had no real injury. They laughed while I could barely stand. None of them knew I had been to that same ER 18 days earlier. None of them knew the neurologist was about to place 2 brain scans on the counter, dated exactly 18 days apart. And none of them knew that single question she was about to ask would destroy the 3 months of lies they had built to cover up what my stepmother did to me. That was the moment their perfect cover-up started to crumble. And my fight began. My name is Saris Ferguson, and I am 32 years old. Welcome back to Mild Justice Stories. If this story is making your blood boil, hit subscribe and join the family, because what happened next changed everything. But to understand why 7 people could stand in a hospital doorway and call me a liar while I was dying, I need to go back. I need to show you how my stepmother built her perfect family illusion, and how she kept it intact for 8 years before the cracks started to show. Diane married my father in the summer of 2018. I was 24. She was 40. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Jessica, who was 21, and Andrew, who was 18. My mother had died 2 years earlier from cancer. My father met Diane 6 months after the funeral. They were engaged 3 months later. Married 3 months after that. I should have seen it then. But grief makes you grateful for anyone who seems to bring your father back to life. Diane was good at surfaces. She hosted Sunday dinners at the house in Claremont Mesa, 6 o'clock sharp every week. She made pot roast and green bean casserole. She set the table with my mother's china. She seated everyone according to a chart she never wrote down, but always enforced. I sat next to my father, never near the door, never near the kitchen, always where she could see me. "We're so lucky to have such a close family," she would say. Then she would count who spoke to whom and for how long. She kept track of conversations like some people keep track of money. I did not realize until much later that Diane was not building a family. She was building an audience. The hierarchy was subtle but clear. Jessica and Andrew got what they asked for. I got conditions. When I went freelance as a graphic designer in 2023, my income became unstable. My father offered help. $800 a month, he said, just until I got on my feet. The checks came from Diane. They always came with comments about my stability. Jessica got $45,000 for a down payment on a condo. No strings. Andrew got his car lease paid in full. No questions. I got $800 a month and lectures about responsibility. By 2026, I was not their daughter. I was their dependent. There is a difference. The first real crack appeared on Christmas Day, 2025. We were at the dessert table. 11 people were there. I asked about my mother's heirlooms, jewelry and photo albums I had not seen since Diane moved in. Diane's face went cold. "Your mother's things are in storage where they are safe from you." I asked what that meant. She walked away. My father's sister Catherine changed the subject immediately. My father said, "Not now, Saris." 11 people heard what Diane said. Not one of them asked her to explain. I let it go that night. I should not have. 3 weeks later, I went to my father's house to pick up the photo albums. It was January 5th, 8:15 in the evening. My father was downstairs watching television. The volume was loud. Diane was upstairs blocking the door to the storage room. "You walk into this house making demands like you own something here. You don't." I told her the albums were mine. She told me nothing in that house was mine anymore. I tried to walk past her. She shoved me. I did not hear her say anything. I just felt her hands on my shoulders. Then I was falling. 14 stairs, second floor landing to the first floor foyer. My head hit the corner of the bottom step on the left side. I saw stars for 6 minutes. There was blood on the wood. Diane stood at the top of the stairs, frozen. When I could finally focus, she was still at the top. She was not asking if I was okay. She was calculating. Then she rushed down. She told me not to call 911. She said it was an accident. She said calling the police would destroy the family. She convinced me I had just slipped. You tripped! That is what happened. You tripped! Do you understand? My father came upstairs at 8:33. He had heard the thud. Diane told him I fell and I was fine. He helped me to the couch. He brought me an ice pack. He did not suggest calling a doctor. My vision was doubled for 45 minutes. My father asked if we should go to urgent care. Diane said, "She will be fine by morning. Let's not make this bigger than it is." The next morning, I woke with a headache that felt like my skull was splitting. Nausea. Light hurt my eyes. Diane handed me 2 Advil and said, "You'll embarrass yourself if you go to a doctor over a bump." She drove me back to my apartment in North Park, 25 minutes from their house. She texted me at 11 that morning. "Feeling better? See, you're fine." I wanted to call my friend Vanessa. I wanted to call urgent care. I did neither. I believed Diane because I had believed her for 8 years. That was my first mistake. January through February, the headaches came 3 or 4 times a week. I told myself it was stress. Diane checked in frequently. It sounded like concern. It was surveillance. Still having headaches? Maybe you need to relax more. By mid-February, I could not hold a coffee cup steady. My right hand had developed a tremor. I had dizzy spells, 12 of them between January and March. I logged them in my phone notes because I thought if I tracked them, I could prove to myself they were not real. I missed 2 client deadlines, February 18th, March 3rd. I lost a contract worth $3,200. My savings dropped to $1,850. Diane called. "We're worried about you. Maybe freelancing is too stressful. Have you thought about something more stable?" It sounded like care. It was control tightening. My friend Vanessa noticed. She is an event planner. We met in college. She lives in North Park, 10 minutes from my apartment. On March 10th, she came over for coffee at Better Buzz. "You forgot my birthday. You never forget. Something is wrong." I told her I was just tired, but I could not remember her phone number during the conversation. I had to look it up while sitting across from her. She took my phone and put her contact in as Ice Vanessa. "Promise me you'll call if anything gets worse." I promised. I did not tell her it was already worse. By mid-March, I could not remember my best friend's phone number, but I could remember every time someone told me to stop exaggerating. On March 15th, at 9:30 in the evening, I had the worst headache of my life, 10 out of 10. My vision blurred. I vomited twice. I could not look at my phone screen. I called an Uber to the ER. I texted Diane at 11:38. "Going to ER for bad headache." She texted back immediately. "On my way. Don't tell them anything until I get there." I arrived at UC San Diego Medical Center in Hillcrest at 11:45. The triage nurse was named Lauren Kemp. She took my vitals. Blood pressure 142/89, pulse 96. She asked if I had any recent head injuries. I started to say, "I fell in January." Diane arrived at 12:18. She cut me off. "No, she is anxious. She gets tension headaches." Lauren looked at me. I looked at Diane. I said nothing. That silence would almost kill me. The ER attending was Dr. James Whitaker. He ordered a CT scan based on my symptoms: sudden severe headache, vision changes, vomiting. The scan was completed at 1:20 in the morning. The radiologist gave a preliminary read by 1:55. Dr. Whitaker came back at 2:10. Diane was still there. He had the scan results on a tablet. "We're seeing fluid collection consistent with prior head trauma. When did this injury occur?" I opened my mouth to say January. Diane said, "She fell off her bike last month. It was minor." I had not been on a bike in 2 years. Dr. Whitaker wrote something down. He said the fluid buildup, he called it a subdural hygroma, Needed monitoring. He told me to follow up in 7 to 10 days. He said to come back immediately if symptoms worsened. At 3:10 in the morning, I was discharged. The paperwork was printed at the nurse station at 3:12. I went to the restroom at 3:18. When I came back, Diane was standing by the discharge desk. The papers were gone. Where are my discharge instructions? They didn't give me any. The doctor said you're fine, just rest. I believed her. The security camera did not. Diane drove me home, 8 minutes from Hillcrest to North Park. She parked. She walked me to my door. She said, "Doctors always overreact. You are fine. Let's not make this a big deal." At 3:58 in the morning, she texted my father. "Home. She's fine, just a headache. No follow-up needed." I went to bed believing Diane had saved me from unnecessary worry. I did not know she had stolen my chance to live. The next morning, March 16th, Diane made 8 phone calls before 10 o'clock. She called my father. She called Jessica. She called Andrew. She called my father's sister Catherine twice. She called Diane's brother Jonathan. She called my father's niece Rachel. She called Diane's cousin Brett. She sent a text to a group chat I was not in. "Intervention dinner tonight, 6 p.m. Cirrus needs reality check." I woke up that morning with a headache. By evening, I would have 7 people telling me it was all in my head. I arrived at the Claremont house at 6:15, expecting a normal Sunday dinner. 9 people were there. Diane led what she called a conversation about my pattern of dramatic behavior. "We love you, but we're worried you're using health scares to get attention. It's time to be honest with yourself." I said, "A doctor ordered follow-up scans." Diane said, "What doctor? I was there. He said you were fine." Catherine, a school principal, used her professional voice. "You're acting like a child seeking validation." Rachel, a nurse practitioner, used her medical authority. "As a medical professional, I can tell you, stress headaches are psychosomatic. You're manifesting symptoms." Jonathan said I was embarrassing the family. Brett said his cousin had anxiety too, and therapy helped. Andrew said Diane was just trying to help. Jessica stayed silent but nodded. My father said, "Let's all calm down." I counted. 7 people, 7 versions of, "You're imagining it." I stopped arguing after that. Over the next 2 days, the family group chat, titled Family Support for C, accumulated 23 messages. Jonathan texted, "Don't respond to her health complaints. She needs to learn." Rachel replied, "Agreed. Tough love." The word attention-seeking appeared 6 times. The word dramatic appeared 9 times. The word enabling appeared 4 times. They were not trying to help me. They were trying to silence me. And it worked for 18 days. On March 20th, I went to my father's house to pick up mail. My permanent address for some documents was still listed there. Diane and my father were both out. There was a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. One envelope was from USAA. Inside was a check made out to Thomas and Diane Ferguson for $12,500. The memo line said, "Bodily injury settlement. Household accident. January 5th, 2026. January 5th, the day I fell. I stood in that kitchen holding proof that my stepmother had made money from my injury and never once mentioned a doctor. The settlement letter was attached. The claim had been filed on January 12th, 1 week after the fall. It was settled on March 15th, the same day as my first ER visit. The claim description said, "Adult dependent injured in household fall, medical treatment ongoing." I had not received any medical treatment between January 5th and March 15th. Diane had lied to an insurance company. The breakdown showed $8,500 for medical expenses that were never incurred, $4,000 for pain and suffering. There were photos attached, pictures of my bruises from January 6th. Diane had taken photos of my bruises, not to document abuse, to document a payday. I sat in my car outside the house at 4:15. My hands were shaking. The timeline was clear. Fall, claim, ER visit, settlement, intervention, all coordinated. Diane was not protecting the family image. She was protecting fraud. If I had gone to a doctor after the fall, there would be medical records. Records that would show the injury was not an accident. Records that would prove fraud. I wanted to scream. Instead, I drove home and saved 12 photos to 3 different places. I did not know yet that those photos would put Diane in handcuffs. The headaches became daily. March 16th through March 22nd. 7 days, 7 headaches. Vision problems started on the 19th. Blurred periphery. I took ibuprofen 18 times. It did not work. On March 21st, I missed my 4th client deadline. I lost my 2nd client. By March 22nd, I could not read a computer screen for more than 20 minutes. I told myself it was stress. Between March 23rd and March 29th, I forgot appointments. Dentist on the 24th. First no-show in 10 years. Coffee with Vanessa on the 26th. I stood her up, she called 4 times. On the 28th, I could not remember how to spell the word calendar. I started recording voice memos, 23 of them between March 23rd and March 29th. Reminders to myself, proof I was not imagining the decline. On March 30th, Vanessa called. I answered. She said, "It's me." I said, "Who?" She drove to my apartment within 15 minutes. It was 7:45 in the evening. She found me confused and weak. My pupils were different sizes. She threatened to call 911. I begged for one more day. She left, but made me promise to call if anything changed. On April 1st, I woke up and could not remember my address. I had lived in that apartment for 3 years. I vomited twice. I found my phone but could not remember Vanessa's number. I scrolled through recent calls until I saw ICE, Vanessa. I went to bed that night thinking I would call a doctor in the morning. I did not know I would not remember the morning. April 2nd, 6:15 in the morning. I woke up disoriented. I did not recognize my own apartment. I found my phone but could not unlock it. I had forgotten the passcode. I sat on the floor and waited. Vanessa knocked. I said, "Who is it?" She said, "It's Vanessa. Open the door." I said, "I don't know how." She used the spare key I had given her in August. She found me on the living room floor. I could not answer simple questions. I could not say my own name clearly. She got me in the car. She called 911 at 6:24 while driving. The operator asked what happened. Vanessa said, "She's 32. Head injury 3 months ago, saw a doctor 18 days ago. Symptoms getting worse, family told her not to go back." The operator asked, "Who told her not to go back to the doctor?" Vanessa said, "Her stepmother." We arrived at UC San Diego Hillcrest ER at 7:05, the same hospital. Vanessa helped me inside. Triage was immediate, priority 2. The triage nurse was Lauren Kemp, the same nurse from March 15th. She recognized me. "You were here 18 days ago. You were supposed to follow up." Vanessa said she tried. Her family stopped her. Lauren looked at me, then at Vanessa. She picked up the phone. "I'm calling the neurologist on call. This is not routine." At 7:20, Vanessa used my phone to call my father. She told him I was in the ER. He said he would come. 32 seconds after he hung up, he called Diane. Diane called Jessica 2 minutes later, then Andrew. Then she sent a group text at 7:28. Within 8 minutes of Vanessa's call, Diane had mobilized 6 people. They were not coming to support me. They were coming to control the narrative. Diane arrived at 7:40 with my father. Jessica and Andrew arrived at 8:05. Catherine and Jonathan arrived at 8:12. Rachel and Brett arrived at 8:15. 8 people in the waiting room, 6 family members plus Diane and my father. Vanessa stayed with me in ER Bay 7. At 8:18, Vanessa went to the bathroom. When she returned 2 minutes later, the doorway to my bay was blocked. Diane stood in the center, arms crossed. Behind her, 6 people formed a wall. That is when it happened. The moment from the beginning of this story. The moment that would destroy everything they had built. Diane stood in that doorway and laughed. "Stop being so fucking dramatic, Saris. It's just a headache. You're always looking for attention like this." Behind her, the chorus started. She's embarrassing the whole family. Always making up stories. They told the nurse I was lying. They told the staff I had no real injury. They laughed while I could barely stand. Lauren heard the commotion from 15 feet away. She walked to bay 7. "Ma'am, you need to step back. You're blocking the doorway," Diane said. "I'm her mother, and I am telling you she is faking." Lauren called security. Extension 4400. At 8:27, 2 officers arrived, Officer Ruiz and Officer Daniels. They moved the group to the waiting room, but Diane was not done. She asked to speak to the doctor. She wanted to correct the medical history. Dr. Whitaker came to base 7 at 8:35. He recognized me. He pulled up the March 15th notes on the computer. He saw the discharge orders. Follow-up CT ordered. No appointment scheduled. "You were supposed to come back in 7 to 10 days. It's been 18. I tried to say, "My stepmother," and could not finish the sentence. Vanessa said her stepmother took the discharge papers and told her the doctor said she was fine. Dr. Whitaker's face changed. At 9 o'clock, the neurologist on call arrived. Her name was Dr. Helena Reynolds. She was 56. She had been on faculty at UC San Diego for 28 years. Lauren had paged her with the word urgent. Dr. Reynolds reviewed my current presentation. Then she pulled the March 15th CT from the system. She ordered a stat repeat scan at 9:03. I was taken to CT immediately. The scan was completed by 9:22. Dr. Reynolds reviewed it with the radiologist, Dr. Philip Winters. Significant interval progression. This was a hygroma 18 days ago. Now it's an acute bleed. The March 15th scan showed 35 milliliters of fluid in my left frontoparietal region. The April 2nd scan showed 90 milliliters of blood in the same location. There was an 8 millimeter shift of everything inside my skull. My brain was being compressed. Dr. Winters asked Dr. Reynolds, "Why didn't she follow up?" Dr. Reynolds said, "That is what I am about to find out." At 9:40, she returned to bay 7 with her tablet. Vanessa was still there. I was more alert after IV fluids and anti-nausea medication. Dr. Reynolds turned the tablet toward me. "This is March 15th. This is today. Do you see the difference?" I saw it. The thing that had been growing in my head while my family told me I was being dramatic. It was real. It had always been real. She asked about the follow-up. Vanessa explained that Diane had taken the discharge papers. Dr. Reynolds made notes in my chart. She typed, "Patient reports obstruction of follow-up care by family member." Then she asked Lauren to bring Diane to consultation room 3, not to my bedside, to a private room. "I need to ask your stepmother some questions, and she needs to answer them very carefully." At 9:50, Lauren escorted Diane to the consultation room, a small windowless room with a desk and 2 chairs. Dr. Reynolds was already inside. Both scans were loaded on the wall-mounted monitor. Diane walked in smiling. She thought she was walking into another conversation she could manage. Dr. Reynolds placed her tablet on the desk. Both scans were visible side by side. "These are 18 days apart. Who told her not to come back?" Diane went pale. The doctor said she was fine." Dr. Reynolds pulled up the discharge orders from March 15th on the tablet, the same instructions Diane had taken from the desk. "I have the discharge orders from March 15th. They say follow up in 7 to 10 days. Did you see those orders?" Diane's face went white. "I don't remember any papers." Dr. Reynolds said, "Then we should check the security footage." Diane said, "This is ridiculous. My stepdaughter is mentally unstable." Dr. Reynolds said, "Your stepdaughter has a brain bleed, and someone prevented her from getting help." At 10 o'clock, Dr. Reynolds called Lauren into the consultation room. She asked what Lauren remembered from the March 15th discharge. Lauren said, "I remember you. You were standing at the discharge desk at 3:20-something in the morning. The patient was in the bathroom." Diane said, "I was picking up her papers because she asked me to." Lauren said, "She was in the bathroom. You picked them up before she came out." At 10:05, Dr. Reynolds asked hospital security to pull footage from March 15th, 3:20 to 3:30 a.m. discharge desk area. Officer Ruiz said the retention policy was 90 days. The footage was still available. March 15th is within retention. I can have that footage pulled in 20 minutes. Diane stood up. I need to check on my husband. Dr. Reynolds said, "Please sit down, Mrs. Ferguson. We are not finished." Diane sat, but her hands were shaking. At 10:10, Dr. Reynolds pulled the March 15th intake form from the records. The medical history section was filled out by family member, Diane's signature, time-stamped 12:22 a.m. Prior head trauma? Checked no. Recent falls or injuries? Checked no. Dr. Reynolds said, "This is your signature. You told the ER staff she had no prior head trauma, but the CT scan shows old injury," which is true. Diane said, I must have misunderstood the question. Dr. Reynolds said, "You signed this form? You committed fraud." At 10:15, Vanessa came to the consultation room with my permission. She had my phone. She told Dr. Reynolds about the insurance discovery and the voicemail from March 16th. Dr. Reynolds asked to hear it. The voicemail played on speaker. Diane's voice. March 16th, 10:08 in the morning, 47 seconds long. From Diane's number to my father's number. "Thomas, don't let her go back to that hospital. They'll ask questions we can't answer if they see the old injury on another scan." The message cut off. Dr. Reynolds looked at Diane. "What questions couldn't you answer, Mrs. Ferguson?" Diane did not speak. At 10:20, Vanessa showed Dr. Reynolds the photos of the insurance documents on her phone, the $12,500 check, the claim form, the settlement letter. Dr. Reynolds read it. She looked at Diane. "You collected $12,500 for her injury and never took her to a doctor?" Diane whispered, "You don't understand." Dr. Reynolds said, "I understand perfectly. You obstructed medical care to hide insurance fraud." At 10:25, Officer Ruiz returned with a tablet. Security footage from March 15th. Camera 4, discharge desk, timestamp 3:24:58. I enter the restroom in the background. Timestamp 3:25:14. Diane approaches the desk. Timestamp 3:25:22. Diane takes the papers. Timestamp 3:25:35. Papers go into her purse. Timestamp 3:26:16. I return to an empty desk. Dr. Reynolds turned to Diane. "Do you still want to tell me you don't remember taking those papers?" Diane stood up and walked out. Dr. Reynolds returned to Base 7 at 10:35. She sat at my bedside. Vanessa was there. I was more alert. "You had a slow bleed from the original injury in January. It should have been monitored. Instead, it grew into something life-threatening." She showed me the two scans on her tablet, side by side. "This is March 15th. This is today. Do you see the difference?" I saw it. March 15th, the warning, April 2nd, the crisis. I asked, "Would I have been okay if I had come back on March 16th? She paused. "Yes." At 10:40, Dr. Reynolds paged the neurosurgery team. Dr. Alan Carver arrived at 10:55. He reviewed the scans. He agreed. Emergency craniotomy. OR time set for 2:30 p.m., 4 hours away. Dr. Carver explained the surgery. Vanessa asked about risks. He said, "The risks are what happens if we don't do it." At 11 o'clock, Dr. Reynolds discussed the long-term prognosis. The 18-day delay had allowed the bleed to grow from 35 milliliters to 90 milliliters, 55 milliliters of growth that should not have happened. The delay added 65 milliliters of blood to your brain. Every milliliter mattered. Every day mattered. I asked if I would be the same person after surgery. Dr. Reynolds said, "I don't know, but I know you won't be alive without it." At 11:15, Dr. Reynolds documented the entire timeline in my medical record. Obstruction of care, family interference, evidence collected. She typed for 10 minutes. Then she looked at me. I am required by California law to report suspected dependent adult abuse. I am filing that report now. She said, "This is no longer just medical care. This is an investigation. Do you understand?" I said yes. I finally understood everything. At 11:25, the hospital social worker arrived. Her name was Janet Pierce. She was 48. She had worked in ER social work for 15 years. She introduced herself as my advocate and liaison to Adult Protective Services. "I am here to make sure you are safe, not just medically safe, safe from whoever did this to you." She asked, "Are you afraid of anyone in your family?" I said yes before I realized I had said it. At 11:35, Janet made the call to the APS hotline. I was in the room. She gave case details. The intake specialist's name was Michael Torres. I was assigned case number APS-SD-2026-08891, 5-day investigation timeline. Janet said, "Adult Protective Services will investigate within 5 business days. They have subpoena power. Your family cannot stop them." She said, "They will interview your stepmother. They will ask about the insurance claim. They will ask about January 5th. I felt something I had not felt in 3 months. I felt believed. At 11:45, Janet created a safety plan. Where would I go after surgery? I said my apartment. She asked if that was safe. Vanessa said, "She's staying with me." Janet documented it. She entered a visitor restriction order in the system. Diane, Thomas, Catherine, Jonathan, Rachel, and Brett. No access without my explicit consent. Jessica and Andrew were not restricted. I said they were not part of the obstruction. Vanessa was listed as my healthcare proxy and emergency contact. Janet updated my hospital record. Under emergency contact, she deleted my father's name. She typed Vanessa's. It felt like freedom. At noon, Officer Ruiz informed Diane, Thomas, and the 4 restricted relatives they had to leave hospital property. He explained the visitor restriction. They were told they could not return without my permission. Diane said, "You can't do that." He said, "We just did." Catherine demanded to speak to an administrator. Denied. Jonathan filmed on his phone. He was told to stop or face trespassing charges. By 12:18, all 6 had left. Vanessa watched from the ER entrance. She said Diane screamed in the parking lot for 5 minutes. Then she got in her car and left. She did not come back. At 12:30, I received a text from Jessica. 4 messages. "I heard what Dr. Reynolds said. I heard the voicemail. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I'm going home. Not to Mom's house. My house. Can I visit you after surgery? I understand if you say no." I replied at 12:42. Yes. Jessica was the only one who broke rank. At 12:45, Vanessa witnessed an argument in the parking lot. Andrew confronting Diane. Andrew's voice was loud enough that 4 people heard it. "You made me lie to her. You made me part of this." Diane got in her car and drove away. Silver Honda Accord, 12:52. Thomas left separately. Blue Chevrolet truck, 12:55. Andrew sat in his car alone for 15 minutes. Vanessa said he cried. At 1 o'clock, Catherine, Jonathan, Rachel, and Brett left together. They clustered near Catherine's white Toyota SUV. Vanessa was 20 feet away. She heard them. "We need to get ahead of this before they twist it. I'm calling my lawyer." They never once said my name. 4 people chose to defend a lie rather than acknowledge the truth. I deleted their numbers that night. At 1:15, I checked my phone. No messages from my father, no calls. I knew he had chosen Diane over me. Vanessa asked if I wanted her to call him. I said no. He made his choice in January. My father watched Diane push me down those stairs. He heard the fall from downstairs. He did nothing. That silence was louder than anything Diane ever said. At 1:30, Dr. Reynolds provided a business card. Mitchell Brennan, attorney specializing in dependent adult abuse and medical obstruction cases. La Jolla office. Adult Protective Services investigates. But if you want consequences, you need an attorney. I recommend Mitchell Brennan. Vanessa called the number. A receptionist answered. Vanessa said, "We need to speak to Mitchell Brennan about a case. It's urgent." She got an appointment for the next day, but Mitchell called me directly at 2 o'clock, 10 minutes before my surgery. He spoke to me for 10 minutes. He asked 3 questions. Did anyone witness the January fall? No. Do you have the insurance documents? Yes. Do you have medical records proving the delay? Yes. He said, "Good, that's enough." He took the case immediately. Pro bono. He said the nature of the case was egregious. Mitchell said, "Focus on surgery. I will handle your stepmother." It was the first time someone had protected me in months. At 2:10, he explained the legal strategy: civil suit for medical obstruction and assault, criminal referral for insurance fraud and dependent adult abuse, restraining order application, coordination with APS. This is not just about money. This is about making sure she cannot do this again, to you or anyone else. Vanessa asked, "Can you win?" Mitchell said, "With this evidence?" She incriminated herself. At 2:20, I was wheeled to pre-op. Vanessa was allowed to stay until anesthesia. I signed consent forms. The anesthesiologist explained the procedure. Count backward from 10. I got to 7. I thought, if I die, at least someone knows the truth. The last thing I saw was Vanessa's face. The last thing I heard was, "I'll be here when you wake up." I went under thinking about Diane's face when Dr. Reynolds asked that question. I wanted to live to see what came next. Surgery started at 2:30. Dr. Carver performed the craniotomy, 4 hours and 15 minutes. 90 milliliters of hematoma evacuated. The dura repaired. The skull flap replaced. I was transferred to the ICU at 6:45. Dr. Carver told Vanessa, "We removed 90 milliliters of blood. If she had waited another week, I don't think she would have made it." I woke up in the ICU. I could not move my head. I could not remember why. Then I saw Vanessa, and I remembered everything. The ICU nurse asked, "Is your family coming?" Vanessa said, "I'm her family." The nurse wrote it down. I was in the ICU for 48 hours. Neuro checks every 2 hours. Pain managed. Vanessa stayed overnight in the waiting room. No family visited, per the restriction order. On April 3rd at 6 in the morning, Dr. Carver did rounds. Excellent progress. I asked if I would be the same. He said, "Ask me in 3 months." I said, "Will I be alive in 3 months?" He smiled. Yes. At 10 o'clock on April 3rd, Mitchell visited me in the step-down unit. I was stable enough for conversation. He brought his laptop. He showed me an evidence inventory. March 15th, security footage. March 16th, voicemail. Insurance claim documents. Falsified medical history form. Dr. Reynolds's clinical notes. A PS intake report. He said, "I have reviewed everything. The voicemail is the smoking gun. It proves intent." At 10:15, he played the voicemail again. I had not heard it since discovery. He created an official transcript for legal filing. Diane's voice, "Thomas, don't let her go back to that hospital. They'll ask questions we can't answer. If they see the old injury on another scan..." Then it cut off. Mitchell pointed to 3 legal elements. "Don't let her go back" meant obstruction. "Questions we can't answer" showed consciousness of guilt. "Old injury" proved Diane knew about the January fall. I asked what old injury meant legally. He said, "It means she knew you were hurt in January, and she chose to hide it instead of help you." At 10:25, he explained that the word "we" implicated my father. She said "we," not "I." Your father knew. This voicemail proves it. I had been trying to protect my father in my mind. The voicemail erased that. He was not a bystander. He was an accomplice. At 10:35, Mitchell explained the voicemail would be played multiple times. Restraining order hearing, a PS investigation, potential criminal trial, civil trial. "I will play this voicemail in court. I will play it slowly. I will make sure every word is heard. Is that okay with you? I said yes. He said, by the time we are done, 12 people will have heard your stepmother's voice trying to hide what she did, and she will have to sit there and listen. At 2 o'clock on April 3rd, Mitchell contacted USAA's Special Investigations Unit. He provided the evidence package, insurance documents, medical records showing no treatment, Dr. Reynolds' notes. The investigator's name was Rebecca Connolly. She said, "Insurance companies hate fraud more than anything. They will investigate aggressively because they paid out $12,500 based on lies." On April 4th, USAA reviewed the original claim from January 12th. Section 8 asked, "Is injured party receiving medical treatment?" Diane had checked, yes. Ongoing. That was a lie. Medical record subpoenas showed the first medical contact was March 15th, 69 days after the fall. No urgent care, no primary care, no ER between January 5th and March 15th. Rebecca Connolly told Mitchell, "She swore under penalty of perjury that treatment was ongoing. We have proof it was not. That is fraud." On April 8th, USAA submitted a criminal fraud referral to the San Diego County District Attorney's Office. White Collar Crime Division. The prosecutor assigned was Deputy DA Lauren Hastings. Recommended charges: insurance fraud, grand theft by false pretenses, perjury. Fraud amount: $12,500 settlement plus $3,200 in investigation costs, $15,700 total. Mitchell told me, "The DA is moving forward. Insurance fraud with this amount is a felony. Your stepmother could face prison time." Between April 5th and April 9th, the APS investigator conducted the 5-day investigation. Her name was Dana Wolf. Day 1, interview with me in the hospital, 2 hours. Day 2, medical records review and interview with Dr. Reynolds. Day 3, attempted interview with Diane. Diane's lawyer blocked it. Day 4, interview with Vanessa and evidence review. Day 5, report completion. Dana told me, "Your stepmother refused to speak to me. She said through her attorney that I was harassing her. That told me everything I needed to know." She said, "In 15 years, I have never seen a case this clear. She obstructed your medical care deliberately, and we can prove it." On April 9th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Dana delivered her findings. I was home at Vanessa's apartment recovering. APS case number APS-SD-2026-08891. 28 pages, 6 findings, 4 recommendations. She read from the report. The evidence supports a finding that Diane Ferguson willfully obstructed necessary medical care, placing the dependent adult at substantial risk of death or serious injury. The report used the word life-threatening 6 times, the word deliberate 4 times, the word obstruction 9 times. I asked what happened next. Dana said, "I forward this to the DA, and I recommend criminal prosecution." She showed me the statistics. 28 pages. Life-threatening appeared 6 times, deliberate 4 times, obstruction 9 times, willful 3 times, endangerment 8 times, fraud 5 times. Dana said, "I use the word life-threatening when someone could have died. I used it 6 times in your case because 6 times your stepmother had a chance to help you and chose not to." Her recommendations were clear. Permanent restraining order against Diane, Thomas, Catherine, Jonathan, Rachel, and Brett. Criminal prosecution coordinated with the USAA case. Emergency contact permanently changed to Vanessa Torres. A PS check-ins at 30, 60, and 90 days. Dana handed me a copy of the report. "Keep this. When you doubt what happened, read page 14. That is where I wrote what she did to you, and why it was evil." I read the report that night. Dana had written the truth in language that could not be argued with. It was the first time I had seen what happened to me described as a crime. On April 12th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the restraining order hearing took place. San Diego County Superior Court, Department 17, Judge Marianne Caldwell presiding. I attended with Vanessa and Mitchell. Diane arrived with her attorney, Gerald Hopkins. Mitchell said, "She hired a lawyer. Good, that means she knows she needs one." Diane sat across the courtroom. She did not look at me, but I looked at her. I wanted her to see that I was still alive. At 2:15, Mitchell presented evidence: 13 exhibits, security footage, voicemail transcript and audio, insurance documents, medical records, a PS report. At 2:28, he played the voicemail in open court. The judge leaned forward. Diane's lawyer shifted in his seat. Diane closed her eyes. The judge said, "Let me hear that again." Mitchell played it a second time at 2:31. The courtroom was silent. The court camera recorded Diane closing her eyes during the second playback. The judge said, "Mr. Hopkins, I assume you have a response to this evidence." He said, "Your Honor, we request a continuance." At 2:45, Gerald Hopkins argued that Diane was trying to protect me from unnecessary medical anxiety. He claimed the voicemail was taken out of context. The judge said, "She is not the mother, and stealing medical discharge papers is not concern." Hopkins tried 3 more times to explain Diane's behavior. The judge stopped him each time. At 3 o'clock, the judge asked about my father's role. Mitchell presented the voicemail as proof of Thomas's knowledge. The judge asked if Thomas wanted to contest his inclusion in the restraining order. Thomas's lawyer, Paul Morrison, said no contest. The judge said to Thomas, "Sir, did you know your daughter needed follow-up medical care?" Thomas said, I trusted my wife." The judge said, "You trusted her more than your daughter's life?" The courtroom camera captured Thomas crying. "My father cried in court. I felt nothing. I had cried for 3 months while he stood silent. It was his turn." At 3:15, Judge Caldwell granted the temporary restraining order against Diane and Thomas. 100 yards distance. No contact, direct or indirect. Permanent restraining order hearing set for May 10th. "Mrs. Ferguson, you are to stay 100 yards from the petitioner. That includes her home, her workplace, and this courthouse after today." The terms were served immediately by the bailiff. Violation meant contempt and arrest. Diane stood to leave. The bailiff said, "Ma'am, you need to exit through the back. The petitioner is exiting through the front. You cannot be within 100 yards. She had to wait. I walked out first. On April 15th at 9 in the morning, Deputy DA Lauren Hastings made her decision. She reviewed the combined evidence: a PS report, USAA referral, medical records, Mitchell's submission. She called Mitchell. "We have enough for multiple felonies. I am filing charges today." The charges were prepared: insurance fraud felony, dependent adult abuse and endangerment felony, obstruction of medical care misdemeanor, grand theft by false pretenses felony, 3 felonies and 1 misdemeanor. Mitchell called me at 10. "She is being arrested today. Are you ready for that?" I said yes. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on April 15th, San Diego Police Department executed an arrest warrant at Diane's Claremont address. Detective Anthony Morales led the team. Diane was taken into custody. Thomas was present but not arrested. Accessory charges were under review. Miranda rights were read. Diane was transported to Las Colinas Detention Facility. Booking at 5:30. Bail set at $75,000. Mitchell called at 4:15. "She is in custody. Bail is $75,000. I asked if she would post it. He said, "Probably, but she will have conditions." Arraignment was scheduled for April 17th at 9 in the morning. Diane would plead, likely not guilty. Trial timeline 6 to 9 months if no plea deal. Mitchell said, "She will plead not guilty. They always do. But with this evidence, she will eventually take a plea deal." I asked what a plea deal would look like. He said, "Prison time, restitution, probation, and a permanent record that says she tried to let you die." On April 16th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jessica visited me at Vanessa's apartment. She brought tulips, my favorite. She had remembered. She stayed 45 minutes. She said she had started therapy. first appointment, April 14th. I enabled her by being silent. I am sorry. I said, "You didn't know." She said, "I should have asked more questions." Jessica asked permission to stay in touch. I granted it. She was the only one who chose me over Diane. That mattered more than her apology. Jessica told me Andrew had moved out of Diane's house on April 13th, the day after the restraining order hearing. He had blocked Diane's number. He sent flowers to the hospital on April 9th, anonymously. I found the card later. Jessica said, "Andrew feels too guilty to face you. He was at the intervention dinner. He voted with Mom." I said, "Tell him I understand, but I can't talk to him yet." Andrew's guilt was his own. I was done carrying other people's feelings. On April 18th, I received a letter from my father. Mailed April 16th, 2 pages, handwritten. "Diane made a mistake, but she loves you. Family is forever. Mistakes happen. Legal action tears us apart. Think of the grandchildren." I had no children. Thomas was confused. There was no acknowledgement of harm, no apology for his own inaction. I read that line 5 times. "Diane made a mistake, but she loves you. She loved me so much she stole my medical papers and collected insurance money while I nearly died." I returned the letter unopened. That was a lie. I had opened it. I read every word. Then I put it back in the envelope and wrote, "Return to sender." Jessica reported that Catherine, Jonathan, Rachel, and Brett had hired a lawyer together, Donald Pierce, Chula Vista. They planned to sue me for defamation. Mitchell laughed when I told him, "They want to sue you for telling the truth? Please let them. I would love that trial." Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. They participated in the obstruction. We had texts proving it. I deleted their numbers. I blocked their emails. I told Mitchell, "If they sue me, I will see them in court, and I will win again." On April 30th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I had my 4-week post-op appointment with Dr. Reynolds, UC San Diego Neurology Clinic. Neurological exams showed excellent recovery. Speech fluent. Memory 85% of baseline. Improved from 60% at discharge. Motor function full, cranial nerves intact. The incision had healed clean. My hair was growing back. Dr. Reynolds said, 4 weeks post-op and you're healing beautifully. You're young, you're strong, and you came back when it mattered." A CT scan was ordered for the 3-month follow-up in July. I asked if I would ever be 100% again. She said, "You will be 100% of who you are now. That person is different, but she is alive." At 10:15, she showed me 3 scans side by side. March 15th, April 2nd, April 30th. March 15th, the warning, 35 milliliters of fluid. April 2nd, the crisis, 90 milliliters of blood, 8 millimeters of brain shift. April 30th, the surgical site healing. No reaccumulation, ventricles symmetric, minimal edema. She saved the images to a USB drive. To keep. Dr. Reynolds said, "You saved your own life by coming back." I said, "Vanessa saved me." She said, "Vanessa drove the car. You made the decision to live." I told her I had been doing part-time freelance work since April 20th. 10 days now, 2 to 3 hours a day. I had regained 1 former client. I had 2 new clients from referrals. I was making about $1,200 a month, enough to contribute to Vanessa's rent. My goal was full-time by August. Dr. Reynolds said, "Listen to your body. If you get tired, stop. Your brain is still healing." I said, "I know. I am listening now." For the first time in 4 months, I was building something instead of losing it. On April 29th, I wrote in my journal. I had started journaling in recovery. My therapist's suggestion. I wrote 3 lessons. Lesson 1, my body knew in January. I ignored it because they told me to. Lesson 2, every document mattered. Discharge papers, voicemail texts, insurance forms. Lesson 3, love does not gaslight. I learned that pain is not dramatic. Pain is data. And when someone tells you to ignore your data, they are telling you to die quietly. If I could go back to January 5th, I would tell that version of me, call 911. Don't ask permission. Your life is not a family vote. Mitchell updated me on the legal status. Diane's criminal trial was set for September 15th if there was no plea. Plea negotiations were ongoing. The DA had offered 3 years prison, 5 years probation, $18,500 in restitution, insurance fraud plus medical costs. Diane's counteroffer was 18 months plus probation and restitution. Mitchell said, "She will probably take a deal. She does not want to sit in court while we play that voicemail for a jury." I said, I would be okay with that. I did not need to see her in prison forever. I needed her to admit what she did. The plea deal would do that. If someone tells you are being dramatic about pain, document everything. Your body knows. And someday, the evidence will speak for you. Keep copies of all medical documents, photos on your phone, cloud backup. Update your emergency contact to someone you trust, not just default to family. If family interferes with medical care, tell a nurse, tell a doctor, tell a social worker, record voicemails, save texts, keep insurance documents. Medical gaslighting is abuse. Name it. I wish I had known these things in January. I am telling you now so you don't learn them the way I did. On April 28th, I framed both sets of discharge papers. The March 15th ones had been recovered from Diane's house by police during evidence collection on April 16th. The DA returned them to me on April 25th after photocopying. The April 2nd ones were the ones that saved my life. I put them in a double 8x10 frame. Left side, March 15th. Right side, April 2nd. Between them, Dr. Reynolds' handwritten note from April 2nd. Patient's account consistent with delayed traumatic brain injury. Reported obstruction of care concerning. The March papers are what Diane tried to hide. The April papers are what the truth looked like when someone finally listened. On April 30th at 6:30 in the evening, I sat at Vanessa's kitchen table. My home now. I looked at the framed papers on the wall. I had coffee, decaf. I had been to therapy that afternoon. Dr. Patricia Lane, trauma specialist. I had been seeing her twice a week since April 20th. Today was my 6th session. I had worked for 3 hours that morning. Freelance graphic design. I had dinner scheduled with Jessica tomorrow, May 1st. The future was within reach. I still have the discharge papers from April 2nd. Not the ones Diane stole, the ones that saved my life. That is the difference between silencing someone and setting them free. They wanted me to stay silent. They wanted me to doubt myself. They wanted me to disappear quietly. I did not. And that changed everything. People who love you don't make you doubt reality. They don't steal your medical records. They don't laugh at you when you're dying. They don't choose money over your life. My stepmother pushed me down 14 stairs and then spent 3 months making sure I wouldn't survive the fall. She almost succeeded, but silence almost killed me. So I chose noise, and noise saved my life. If you are being told you are dramatic when something is truly wrong, trust yourself. Document everything. Find one person who will believe you. And when the time comes, let the evidence speak. Because the truth does not need to be loud. It just needs to be documented. I look at those discharge papers every morning. The stolen ones and the ones that saved me. They remind me that some people will try to erase you. And some people will make sure you are found. Vanessa found me. Lauren remembered me. Dr. Reynolds believed me. Janet protected me. Mitchell fought for me. Dana documented the truth. And I survived. That is the story. That is what happened when my stepmother stood in an ER doorway and laughed while I was dying. She thought she had won. She thought I would stay silent. But the neurologist placed 2 brain scans on the counter. And she asked one question. Who told her not to come back? That question destroyed everything Diane had built, and it saved my life. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your body knows. Trust it, document it, and never let anyone make you doubt what you know is true. Thank you for listening. And if you have ever been told you were being dramatic when you were actually in danger, I believe you.